Daragh Fleming, my man.
How's it going?
Very good.
It's been a long time coming.
This has been a long time coming through patience and perseverance, yes.
And moving between countries, because I know when we got in contact first, I was living in Barcelona.
That's
and it
right.
was like, oh yeah, next time I'm back home, but I'd be going to Cork, and then we'd have to drive, and we were trying to
Yes.
it was never going to happen.
And then you moved to Dublin, and here we are.
And here we are.
See, just divine timing, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
All
Brilliant.
things as they should be. Like,
Exactly. Well, my man, you're here because you're a very interesting character, someone that I am incredibly inspired by. I love the depth of you, which is then obviously presented itself through the depth of your work. And you're a massive advocate for mental health, especially for men's mental health, which is this similar field that I'm in. But all of these things have their origins, of course. And it seemed as though someone else's death, someone that was quite close to you, their death has inspired you to come to life in your own way. Just tell us about that.
that's a lovely way of putting that. And thank you for being told you're inspiring is always mad. So thank you.
I hear you.
Because I'm just ultimately just a fiend from Cork, like. But,
Don't limit yourself.
But yeah, someone else's death bringing me to life. Wow. Yeah, so like, and people who know me will know this story quite well, but for anyone who doesn't, my best friend took his own life when I was 17. His anniversary was actually yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So it's 14 years yesterday, which it's kind of interesting how grief works, because like yesterday I wasn't really sad. I was more like, it tends to like these years as it kind of went over the 10-year mark, I more kind of think about like what his life would look like now, because I can't even imagine him as a 30-something-year-old. You know, he only got to 18, so that's always interesting. But yeah, I suppose a lot of my work, well, most of my work kind of stems from that that experience, like that moment changed everything, like for me and in me, in terms of like, before that, I didn't even consider suicide as a thing that would happen in and around my circle. Mental health wasn't anything I was like aware of. And this was 14 years ago, so we weren't really talking about it then. But even if we were, like my childhood and stuff was very like normal and uneventful. And then this happened, and it made me realize that suicide can kind of come for anyone, and it can come for people in my life. It could come for me, and that was my best friend taking his own life was my introduction to what bad mental health can cause. And so as a result of that, like all of my work is kind of around this idea of, you know, talking about mental health, but also like normalizing emotion. And that's kind of where the focus on men comes in, because it's not even necessarily about like normalizing mental health struggles, which is part of it, but even just normalizing men expressing emotions, or anyone expressing their emotions. I found my whole life that like the men I admire and look up to, like my father, my brother, loads of people in my life, all good people, but still struggled to express themselves. And Irby was a case of that as well, where he was obviously struggling and I was his best friend and I had no idea because he couldn't talk about it. So that was kind of it's kind of the thesis of all my work, is like, how do we get people to be okay with talking about their emotions and get them to realize that whatever way they're feeling isn't in isolation. There's someone somewhere else who has felt this.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a loneliness, especially today with everything, social media, that we're so disconnected and we feel very isolated in our experience. And it's just, there's so many of us feeling the same things.
Mm-hmm. It's like being the great pretender, isn't it? And it's the pride that comes from the pretending as well, because the pretending is I'm strong. I've got this, you know, struggles don't faze me. I'm masculine, I'm tough.
Yeah, you just go watch Rocky and you know, grin and bear it and you're fine. But like, that's not how emotions work.
Exactly.
Know?
But then there's also, as I said, the pride comes from the validation from other people. Because as you've experienced in your own life, and as I've experienced it, we're brought up in this sort of idea of men being the superheroes and men being the strong, assertive figures in life and society.
Yeah.
We're not sort of taught this idea that, men also have their moments of vulnerability and weakness, and men always also have their moments where they're sitting there in a corner and just crying their eyes out. And that's part of not just being a man, but that's part of being a human.
Yeah.
So the whole human experience is not just to go through your life with this sense of toughness or hardness or resilience and strength. Like the whole human experience is experiencing the full range of emotions and feelings that the human body and the mind goes through.
Yeah.
And for a lot of men, it's almost as though, no, that doesn't exist in me. That can't exist in me.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like this, because of like these conditioned ideas of what a man is and ideas of masculinity and femininity, we kind of put, and like not, I don't think it's men in isolation. As a society, we put different emotions into different categories. So like there's certain negative emotions that men can experience and express. Typically like anger. You can be angry as much as you want. That's not that it's cool or okay, but like it's so socially acceptable. Like, men do get angry.
Oh, you're so tough.
And then if a man wants to cry or needs to cry or feels rejected or disappointed, all of those emotions are all quite nuanced, but they're just funneled into anger. Because we're allowed to be angry, we're allowed to scream at the football match, but we're not allowed to be like upset because we got rejected from a job and said that's angry because we got rejected from a job. So we put all these like emotions into different categories, and then there's some emotions or some emotional expressions that we typically think of as more feminine. And I think the crux of it for me, because I do think about this a lot, is so like every person has masculine and feminine energy, like different balances of it. Typically men have more masculine energy, but we still have feminine energy. And I think what's kind of gone wrong is men are resistant to embracing their feminine side. So like me, I'm not like a traditional man. I've never been into sport. I cry quite a lot. I write poetry. There's a lot of like feminine structures in my personality according to like societal expectations. And when you're growing up, especially like as a teenager, if you showcase that side of yourself, you're inevitably accused of being gay. And what really is being said there is the behaviors you're expressing aren't conducive with our understanding of what it means to be a man. Because I remember like, if you express that you had a crush on a girl, the lads would be like, oh, that's gay. Which is like obviously the exact opposite of what being gay is. But like that's the web that you're kind of caught in, where you're like, I need to figure out what's socially acceptable for me to do emotionally as a man and what isn't acceptable, and just shut down everything that isn't acceptable. And then if you do that for years and years and years, generations and generations, when we get to a point like now where we're encouraging men to be vulnerable and be emotional, it's not just going to happen overnight. It's going to take generations and generations to undo all that wiring and put in the new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Do you feel that adding a label on those energies of masculine and feminine could actually become a barrier to men allowing themselves to feel the feminine energy?
Yeah.
Because when you say feminine, the man's initial response is, "Oh, that's
unmanly.
That's woman. That's for a woman. That's
Yeah.
We understand it as such. It's just a balance of energy in our systems and in our psyche as human beings. But I feel that sometimes putting labels on these energies is sort of splitting it in terms of okay, you can be masculine over here. You can express these masculine emotions and feelings here, but you also have to showcase and express these feminine emotions. Like what emotions? Feminine emotions? What?
Yeah.
Feminine emotions? No. Okay, hang on. Let's remove the label and just express yourself.
Yeah.
It's like
literally.
Just express yourself.
Yeah, the lexicon does really trip you up. And like, even to be honest, I am kind of, which is interesting because I work so much in this field, I'm kind of tired of talking about masculinity. Because for me, like, and the poem I brought to maybe do later kind of touches on this. Like, I think we should be it would be far more productive if we just focus on what it means to be a good and healthy person as opposed to what it means to be a good and healthy man. Because if you're a man regardless how you show up in the world. So like, that's just kind of like uninteresting to explore, because like that's just part of whatever you are. But you as a person is something you can work on and change and adapt. And there's healthy and unhealthy versions of that. And I'm like, that's probably where we should be focused, because then it cuts out all this division that inevitably occurs when you talk about something specific. It's like, oh, why aren't you talking about this? Whereas if we talk about what it means to be good, healthy, safe, caring people, then there's no real division, and it makes it far more straightforward, as you said, rather than expressing feminine emotion, just express yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like just to become the best version of you is to become the complete version of you. And to become the complete version of you is to feel every complete emotion, or feel every emotion completely, like 100%. Like if you feel sad, right, bring that sadness up to not 5%, not 10, 100% sadness. So you can just go through that process of sadness to be done with it, instead of repressing or suppressing it, only for that sadness to come up then through alcoholism or through porn or through some other destructive action in your life, because that's where you feel safe to express your sadness.
Yeah.
And I feel for men, that's a massive thing for my work, and for your work as well, to a certain extent, is here's a safe place for you just to be you. And it's a massive part of my work where I'm bringing a man into this work, or bringing a man back to himself. And I'm saying, look, here's a safe place. And for this to feel like it's a safer place for you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. And I'm going to tell you about my porn addiction. I'm going to tell you about the shame I've carried in my life for a long time. I'm going to tell you about the guilt that crushed me. I'm going to tell you about the heartbreaks. And he's listening to that going, okay, I think I can trust this guy with my struggles.
Yeah, it is. It actually is really similar, because like, while I don't really necessarily engage with people one-on-one, basically doing the same thing, and I think it kind of boils down to like giving yourself permission to feel things. And if you can, like, so I do it through poetry, you do it through conversation. If I can show you that I'm giving myself permission to feel these things and express these things, then that might encourage you to do the same. It's like, oh, we're allowed to do this. We're allowed to express these emotions. I thought if I was guilty, I thought I had to be angry about it, but I can actually just express that guilt in however it comes up naturally. It doesn't have to be forced into this box. And that's kind of the feedback I get from a lot of the poetry. It's like, I've always felt like this, but I've never had the words, or I didn't realize I was feeling this until I heard the poem, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just, you're helping people to give themselves permission.
Exactly.
Which is like a very, like, for me, like, is such an honor to be able to do. With whatever, like, words. And ultimately, like, I don't stand on a ceremony like being a poet's being a dork. Like, you're a little dork in a way. It's like, oh, like, because I tend to not take myself too seriously as a person, because I'm like, I am writing poetry at the end of the day, like, which I do love, but I'm like, it doesn't know. And like you've seen from some of my content, like, it's not always serious and heavy.
Yeah.
And the reason, and that's kind of done on purpose in terms of like, well, like, authentically in my life, not everything's really serious and heavy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's funny and light. So like, I think
you're just missing the monocle and the cape.
Yeah.
And the pipe there.
Exactly. So like, I just think it needs to reflect that in order for it to be authentic. That like, okay, there are times where I'm really upset and grieving and frustrated, but there's also times where I'm fine.
Yeah. Just have
and it's okay to experience both.
Yeah,
and sometimes experience them both simultaneously.
Of course. When did you first give yourself permission to feel and to express?
Well, when Irby died, I grieved quite, I'd say, healthily at the beginning, in terms of like, I was allowing myself to cry and be upset. And then as the months went on, that kind of got a little messy, because I would be just at school or something and I'd feel fine. And then I'd be like, you shouldn't feel fine because Irby's not here. And this might be like 2 months after he's gone. So then I'd make myself feel guilty for feeling okay, and like kind of force myself back into feeling sad. Kept doing that. And then maybe like 8 months down the road, I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I can see this. I stopped really feeling, because I I don't know, maybe it was like things had short circuited. I was feeling too much, and then
Defense mechanism, really. Is it
Yes.
feeling too vulnerable all the time?
yeah. So then I stopped feeling, and that for me was fine because I couldn't even feel afraid that I wasn't feeling. So I was like, oh, okay. And then I learned in college later that was emotional anhedonia, and it went on for 3 years. So like emotional numbness, I just couldn't feel anymore. So and then I remember I found out what depression was in clinical psychology lecture because I studied psychology, and I kind of saw myself in the symptoms, but I was like, this, I can see it, but I don't want to believe it. Because for me at the time, I was like, that means I failed, or there's something wrong with me, and my parents won't love me anymore, and people will treat me differently. All this really like toxic stigma.
Yeah.
So I denied it for a further year. Then I remember I was on a college night out. Everyone was doing MDMA. I'd never really been into drugs, but I felt very isolated in my friend group, so I decided I would do it that night. Took a little pill. As soon as I like swallowed it, I knew it was a mistake. I was like, I've absolutely fucked up here. And then when the drug started hitting me, I started to have this massive panic attack. And it was my first time having a panic attack. So then my friends brought me home. Thankfully, everything was okay. And it was the next morning, I was like, right, I've now gotten to a point where in order for me to feel some way okay, I've turned to drugs, even though it was my first time. And then I had a panic attack. I was like, I can no longer like pretend everything's fine and I'm doing okay. So that's when I signed up to therapy for the first time. And I went to that for like 6 months. And I think it was, it still took me such a long time after that because I was like, right, I'm back at a place where I'm okay and I'm not looking to these kind of external forces to, cope. But I wasn't like flourishing. I was like fine, and I started working, and then I went back to college, and I was still kind of in and out of depression. And then it was when I was 25, 26, I started writing a book called Lonely Boy. And the reason I started writing it is because, well, one, I never really intended it for it to be a book. I was journaling because I, at this point, had never been in a long-term relationship. I kept like running from them. And it was all really like insignificant, like quote unquote flaws or things I didn't think were right. And I was like, oh no, get out of here. But I was just like afraid of commitment and afraid of being abandoned and all the rest. So I started writing that book, and it kind of exploded into all these other things I was dealing with. And what I kind of came to the conclusion of was I didn't believe I deserved to be happy because Irby didn't have the chance to be happy. So it was kind of like, and almost very much a cliche of like survivor's guilt, where I was like, I was self-sabotaging myself left, right, and center because when things started going good, I was like, I don't deserve this. Very similarly to when I was grieving at the start, when I started to feel okay, and I was like, oh no, you should be feeling bad because he's not here. Same thing was happening like almost 10 years later. And that kind of clicked with me. And then that's when the kind of work of like actually loving myself and convincing myself that I deserve to be happy started. And yeah, that's kind of, so like Irby died when I was 17. It took me 9 years to get to a point where I was like, it's okay. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to like have emotions and have good relationships and, thrive if that's what you want. It took me 9 years, which is wild.
Yeah. It's funny that it took me about the same length of time for me to finally reach out for help after a car accident when I was as you're aware of, when I was 18. So it was 9 or 10 years before I made the call. And yeah, I mean, on reflection, you probably understand it now, and maybe I do too, in the sense of like, okay, I had to go through that whole process to realize that, okay, this is in me. This is something I'm carrying that's having an impact on my life, that's causing these relationships to break down, that's causing for me addictions to occur. Okay, it's something in here that's being presented out there. So instead of looking for the answers in the external, let's turn internally now, and let's start being honest and real with what you're feeling, what those emotions that I wasn't expressing at the time. I wasn't telling anyone how guilty I was feeling, how sad I was feeling, how I carried this self-hatred. Nobody knew. Only I knew.
Yeah.
And on the outside, I was this, for a long time, this party animal, the guy who was good crack, the guy who made people laugh, the guy who then maybe got into good shape, who was strong and tough and whatever else. Again, all a beautiful armor for the underlying insecurities. So, yeah, there comes a time when something breaks and you identify that there's repair required here. And was it a defining moment for you in terms of like a relationship breakup, or was it just an accumulation of?
It was just a repeat pattern of behavior. Because like, I guess like just to touch on what you were just saying, like it does feel like at a certain point you have to acknowledge that you're performing and you're not actually being yourself, because you can't be yourself because there's nothing really there underneath the masks, which
emptiness.
No, but it wasn't like something big had happened. It was more that like every time I met someone that I like thought we could like create something that was like long term and of value, I was like, oh yeah, I really like this person. Like I'm in. I want to see how this goes. And then at some point it would just be like, you need to get out of here. You need to go. And that just kept happening. And it was really frustrating because it was like the conscious part of me was like, no, I really want a partner. And then there was an unconscious part of me that was like, yeah, but that's not going to happen. So there was like a kind of fight against myself.
I'll run before I get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it was because like it was that. It was like we're going to get out of here before you can like
leave me.
Before you have to become vulnerable enough to get hurt.
Yeah.
So it can all be surface level, and then when it starts getting real, it's like we gotta go.
Because that's what a relationship is, isn't it? I mean, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be real if you really want to have a deep connection with someone else.
Totally,
being honest.
Yeah, you are handing them your heart, like, and being like, don't hurt this heart.
Yeah.
And there's something like now, like I've been in a relationship now for almost a year and a half. Which is kind of like my first long-term relationship, and I'm 31, like, which is mad, but
not that mad.
Yeah, I suppose I'm probably just projecting
going
onto
off
myself.
Societal norms. Unpack that.
Unpack that. Yeah, let's unpack that. But there is something lovely about having that trust and intimacy that, like, because like especially for men, I think there's this romanticization of like being a ladies' man and one night stands and all this kind of stuff. And obviously there's a
thrill.
There's a thrill to that, but you're also like, so then if you decide you want a long-term relationship, there's a bargain. It's like you're giving up that for something else that's actually of more valuable over the long term. And I think, like I don't think I could have convinced my like 22-year-old self that was true. But
that's why you had to go through it in order to now know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
so you had to almost exhaust that pursuit to then realize that okay, this is not the answer. This is not what I truly want or desire. And
because ultimately, if you're living that life, and I did live that life, it's extremely lonely, and you're spending all of your like the nights where you really need someone on your own, and then you're like
because you're too afraid to
open up. So like you're dealing with all the really hard stuff on your own, and you might be having all the fun times with someone else, but in order to be in a real relationship, you need someone that will be with you for both. And in order for that to happen, you need to be at a place where you can be vulnerable. Because if you can't be vulnerable, it won't work. If it's just your partner's being vulnerable but you're not, that's not going to work. And so in order for me to become vulnerable, I had to go through all that kind of chaos and like self-neglect to get to a point where I was like, this can't continue. Like, something needs to change, or else I don't know how this is going to end. Like, so
today I'm drinking this delicious blend from Full Circle. It's a blend with lime, melon, pear, and dark chocolate. I have to say it's been one of my favorite coffees from them so far. And to check out this blend, and to check out their other range of coffees, click the link below and thank me later. So what's it been like now? Because my understanding is that we could do all this healing on our own. We can heal these wounds of the past through therapy and through our own work and through journaling or poetry or short stories and whatever the modalities that we use.
Mm.
But then a woman comes into your life, or you start a relationship, and then she's reflecting back to you some of the healing that's yet to occur in your life. And that can be a difficult thing to perhaps acknowledge.
Yeah.
So having now moved into this relationship, do you feel that that's brought on the next stage of growth for you? Or do you feel like you've grown to an extent where you can just enjoy this relationship for what it is? Or what's your sort of perspective on that?
No, I wouldn't say it's just like, okay, now everything's fine and we can just do a relationship. It's still coming in kind of like, remember at the start very tentatively, like, but I think what was really important is that Holly is really like emotionally intelligent and like patient. And I remember at the beginning, I felt like things were moving too quickly. And I was like, things need to slow down. You know, I'm still kind of in this, like, there's still part of me is in the mode of like, oh God, I need to go.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go. And I knew that, like, I remember I had a chat with myself. I was like, every other time you've ran. So maybe just one time, even when you're uncomfortable,
Lean in.
And I had that conversation with Holly and we talked about it. And then it was just like, there was just this really lovely like understanding that like if I am feeling uncomfortable, that we can talk about that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an argument. It's a conversation like, look, this and this is happening and I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And that's been really like nice because the person you're almost afraid to commit to is the one who's helping you commit, which is like just really like, yeah, I felt safe.
Yeah,
I think.
I mean that's really it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like there's a woman holding a safe space for you to express, and I feel that's something that has been absent in men's lives for a very long time, in the sense of we have often felt as though expressing our feelings to a woman is going to cause her to become unhappy and sad or disappointed. And then we create this story that I'm going to burden her with my problems here. And I'm actually going to feel guilty through how I'm making her feel through what I'm expressing. Now, again, this is a story. This is a condition. But when a woman sits there with you and just allows you to speak from your heart and express your truth, and sometimes I'm sure you've experienced this, she doesn't say anything. She just listens. And she holds that space for you. She doesn't run. She's not affected because she understands it's not her. It's you. And if anything, she feels a sense of gratitude for how brave you've been and courageous you've been to express this. And to me, that's going to deepen the connection, the relationship. If she's obviously in that place, if she has her own shit, then it's going to be potentially presented through what you're presenting to her from your struggle. So if it brings up something for her and then she's projecting it upon you as anger or shame or sadness, then, well, that's your thing. I actually haven't made you anything. If you squeeze an orange juice comes out. If I've squeezed you with my words or behaviors and anger comes out, it's because anger was already there. I didn't put that there. Now, you have the blessing of having a woman who's emotionally intelligent, and that's massive. Yeah. But I'm sure you've had also the grace and the blessing of having women in your life that weren't so emotionally intelligent that then created this story in your life that it wasn't safe for you to express.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, and then like, I mean, because there's two people in every relationship. So there's also like, as much as there's been times in my life where I've been seeing a girl or a woman who's been maybe not ready for this type of relationship or mightn't have that emotional intelligence, there's also been times where I've been the one who's emotionally unintelligent and immature and running away. So like, I think it all comes into timing and just like, it like with Holly, it was I don't know, it was just easier. Like there was no sense of like obligation or I had to do something or I have to go and do this. It was like, oh yeah, this is like at this, I mean, sometimes it isn't even that deep in terms of like, oh, I just like hanging out with this person regardless of what we're doing. And that hasn't always been the case when I've been dating. Like sometimes it's like, oh, I have to go do that.
Yeah, I've got to do something.
Which is like happy. Probably not I probably should be a red flag that maybe you're not seeing the right person.
Yeah.
And then it builds from that simplicity, it builds into something very complex. And I think what we have now is quite complex and has all those things we've talked about in terms of safety and understanding. But that isn't to say sometimes we don't eat the heads off each other and just like don't, because sometimes, and it has happened where you pick a moment to express yourself and it mightn't be the right time for that expression, and that happens.
Yeah,
and that's fine too, but it's just once there's mutual respect and good communication, I think you're onto a winner.
Yeah, because there's also that process of when she expresses herself to you and that you don't become defensive and you don't start projecting.
Yeah.
And, women go through their moments, go through their cycles, and that can bring up a lot of difficult emotions for them, and all they need, as we need at times, is to feel safe. And for a lot of men, again, in those types of scenarios, they'll run away because the anger, the rage of the woman is provoking a deep pain within them. I'm going, well, thank her. She's actually showing you something here that you need to heal. Of course, that's where they choose to go. But yeah, so there's that process of, the responsibility of being able to hold a safe space for her as well in her moments of vulnerability. But that it's not all that. It's not all you just giving and never allowing yourself to receive. Or I'll only receive from her if I give her something first. So it becomes like a conditional,
transactional type of thing.
That kind of thing, which I'm sure you've experienced as well in different relationships and dynamics. So, like, what's the greatest thing that you've taken from this relationship or learned from this relationship compared to previous ones?
I think it's just, I think for a long time I was extremely lonely, even when I had like good friends and I've always had a good family. I always felt like I was dealing with the world on my own. And now it's kind of like, if it's from like family issues to work issues to anything that's going on, I'm like, it's not just my brain that's working on this. We're like, we have another team member who's locked in as well. And it's like coming at the world as a unit is like, again, that's what you're bargaining with, like being single versus being in like a healthy relationship is like, you are also like, as much as you're getting a loving partner and someone who you have fun with, you're also getting all of their like resources for you to use when they can and want to. Obviously, it's not like I'm just going to, but like when they want to get involved, they're there to get involved. And having that, again, like feeling of safety, not just in the relationship, but out in the world. Because when something goes wrong in the world, you can come back and you have someone who's like, it's okay, we'll get through this. Like that's invaluable. Like, and I've never really had that before. So it no longer feels like as big an undertaking to like just be living life. I'm like, oh, but there's two of us living it now. So that's good.
How did you get over that feeling of potentially burdening her with your problems or burdening her with your struggles instead of allowing yourself just to express without her feeling the sense of responsibility over it?
I suppose like, because it's not like, I don't necessarily like tell her of all the emotional undercurrents and ripples, but like, it's kind of like if there's, and I don't know where the point is, but when an emotion gets to a point where it starts to become overwhelming, then I'm like, even just like as small as like, I'm feeling really stressed today, blah, blah, blah. But if it doesn't get to that point, I'm like, I can deal with this on my own.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't always have to be expressed or shared.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of an important thing to raise, because
Texting every 2 minutes with
yeah.
I'm feeling guilty now. Oh, actually, no, it's turned to sadness. Oh,
Yeah.
no, anger now. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, when we're talking about like, there's still such thing as like tact and, self-awareness. Because, we do live in this kind of era of like all emotions are valid, which I agree with to an extent, but I'm also like, not all emotions have to be shared.
Not all emotions have to be validated.
There you go. That's probably better. You should probably write poetry.
No, that's your forte, man. Yeah, I'll just continue the discussion. Yes.
No, 100%. So like, we kind of understand this inherently when we're talking about anxiety. It's like, when you're feeling anxious, a lot of the things you're thinking aren't true. And a lot of the way you're feeling isn't true. But you're obviously experiencing that as a real emotion. But like, it's when you do like cognitive behavioral therapy, you're like, okay, that's unfounded. That makes no sense. That's not true. So like, sometimes while the feeling is real, it might be out of context.
Yeah, the story's not true.
Or maybe you haven't had enough sleep, or maybe you haven't drank enough water. And there's a lot of things that are like, on a good day, you wouldn't be this angry about this situation.
It's causing dysregulation. Yeah. Which is your responsibility to regulate.
Yeah. That's why it's self-regulation. Although there's co-regulation too, but that's different. But like co-regulation for me is the things where like when I get overwhelmed and I chat with Holly, then we'll co-regulate. But a lot of it can be self-regulated. It's only when it gets to the point of like crisis or pre-crisis, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not going to sleep tonight unless I talk to her about this.
Yeah, okay. I get you.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to, talking about your friend there, and obviously his anniversary was yesterday. Have you processed the guilt that you feel around his death? Or is it still a process?
I think I definitely am in a far better place with it. There's kind of two things. One of them is sillier than the other, but there's two things that happened that really mess with my head around that guilt. So the first one, which is the kind of more serious one, is that on the day, it was a Wednesday when he took his own life. On that day, he came up to me after school. We got a half day, and he asked me to go for lunch with him. And I had other plans with people. He was a year ahead of me in school. I had other plans with friends of my own year in town, so I was like, I can't, I have other plans. And we had basketball training that night, so I was like, I'll see you training tonight. And like, there have been times where he's had other plans. We went to for lunch a lot, and sometimes one or the other couldn't make it. So that wasn't a big deal until what happened. And then I was like, if I had gone to lunch, would things have been different? And obviously I can never know that. And, there's an equal chance that nothing would have happened any differently, but maybe, there's always the what if. So that really messed with me for a long time. Really found that hard to let go. And then because, God bless my parents, because they were kind of between a rock and a hard place. I wanted to get a tattoo, but I was only 17. But because he was my best friend, they were like, we can't really say no. So I got a tattoo on my chest that said, "Live through me." And that created a whole range of like subconscious and conscious issues where I was like, days where I was feeling really depressed and couldn't get out of bed. I was like, I'm supposed to be living for two people, and I can't even do one person's worth of life. And that was really messing with my head, causing more guilt and more shame around his death. So like all of that stuff in my early 20s really had a part to play. And again, I addressed a lot of this in Lonely Boy. It was just leave and go. And you kind of mentioned earlier where like things are inside you, like, and ultimately you're holding on to them. And there was probably a part of it that was like, at least this kind of suffering I'm going through is familiar. I don't really know what leaving go of this would be like. And there's a bit of fear attached to that. So kind of being brave enough to let go of it is a big part of like getting over these traumas of like, we live in a world where there's lots of labels around various parts of life. And a lot of like, I remember like in my early 20s when I was doing like the Thoughts Too Big stuff, there'd be a lot of accounts following, and they'd be like, their bio would be like depressed, and then 4 or 5 different labels. And I'm like, if if depression is part of your identity structure, then you're never going to let it go. And that was definitely what was happening to me. I was like, I don't know who I am without this kind of brooding darkness inside me. And then I just was able to let it go at a certain point when I'd written enough about it to understand why I was holding on to it. And yeah, and it's been, you know, there's an understanding there now that like there's nothing I could have done. He never talked to me about it. He never talked to anyone about it. There was a lot of stuff going on with him that I didn't know about. So it wasn't my fault, despite me telling myself I had a part to play in it for a long time.
Yeah, that's very nicely put. I mean, we'll always resort to what feels familiar, isn't it? Because it's what we know.
Yeah.
And then to let that go, we step into the unknown, which is often, well, beautiful, but equally terrifying as well at the same time, because there's a part of you that knows if you let that go, you're going to be free from it. You're going to be liberated. You're going to feel a bit more peaceful, at least.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? Like, I mean, that's not a place that's familiar to me. And it's, you know, also resemblance of the relationships that you've been in and out of, is that, you know, that was a familiar pattern for you for a long time until Holly's come into your life. But you've looked at that pattern, you've identified the pain that was influencing that pattern, you've healed the pain in your own way, you've let go of the guilt, you've let go of the fear of being abandoned, and you've just allowed yourself now to take a risk and say, well, yeah, she could still leave, but I'll be okay.
No, for sure. Like, and it is, I do think about it sometimes. I'm like, the risk I'm taking is like you're rolling the dice on being happy, whereas before, like, it was like, that's not even in the cards, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's just funny to be like, I'm gonna put it all on being happy, which is like probably the bet to make if you're gonna make one.
Yeah,
you know.
As in before, you didn't feel you deserved happiness, so
it wasn't even like,
why would I even try?
Yeah, let's just keep fucking our shit up. It's fine.
Yeah. And then, like, throughout that process of your friend passing away, where did you find poetry as a way to express your emotions and using that as a healing modality?
Yeah, it's so like writing and like when I was a kid, I was a massive reader, like read, and I remember it got to a point where my parents sat me down and they were like, "We actually can't afford to buy all these books, so you have to join the library," and that was fine. Into the library, and I was always writing and stuff, so I was just always like, that was always a natural place for me to hang out. Whether it was like writing poetry or short stories.
So you're writing poetry, or this when you were younger?
When I was younger, yeah. And then when I went into like secondary school, kind of came away from it because like you're dealing with like,
it's not cool, is it?
Not cool, yeah. And probably not like manly. And then, you know, you're going through all this hormonal change. And I was into sport. But then when Irby died and I got depressed and I didn't go to therapy for like 3 years. When I went to therapy when I was about 21, my therapist was introduced this idea of journaling to me. And I was like, oh yeah, that seems like a good idea. And I had journaled like briefly just after Irby died. Because a different counsellor told me to like write letters to him and stuff. And I was just really angry. So then I was like, oh yeah, I must get back to that. But my like journaling style was just tended to be these kind of like short bursts of like what happened today, how I'm feeling, conclusion.
Yeah, okay.
Which is like
a diary nearly.
Yeah, and it was very just like short and brief and vaguely poetic. And then I was like, oh, these are kind of interesting to do. So I was doing lots of them. And then I sent one of them to a friend of mine in the UK who was a poet. And I was like, I'm not saying I'm writing poetry or anything, but I was like, I don't think this is half bad. And I was like, would you just give me your thoughts on it? And she was like, yeah, no, that one, she worked for a poetry magazine at the time. She was like, I'll give that to our editor and see if they want to publish it. And they did. So then that was like validation for my like poetry like immediately. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just kept doing it then. So that's how that started. But it really started as like connecting with my emotion again, because I was coming out of this like period of emotional numbness, and writing the poems, say I might feel the beginning of a feeling, like a little inkling of sadness or happiness. I found that if I wrote about it and stayed in the moment of it, then I was able to like funnel the flame and actually feel a little bit more. So that's what like poetry was doing for me. I was like, okay, because at this point I was like, I don't care what I'm feeling, good or bad, it's better than feeling nothing. So even if it was a bad emotion, which typically poetry is often around negative emotion, or can be, I was like, this is still better than feeling nothing. So that's kind of where it started and why I kind of got like really into it, because I was like, this is a creative outlet, but it's also like helping me to connect with my emotions again, which was the most important thing to me at the time.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel a sense of apprehension that the very fuel or the very pain that influenced the very beautiful writing at the start will sort of dissipate as that flame of pain sort of diminishes?
Yeah, I mean, there is a kind of cliche fear among writers that like you have to be really messed up to write really well. And there's lots of examples of that being true, like Hunter S. Thompson, Oscar Wilde, like all these people were like troubled and didn't lead the most like, I don't know, easy lives. And so there's this sense of that being true, but I think that's almost an excuse to
stay stuck
and stay in these like unhelpful habits, because you're like, oh, but I'm a writer and all of this is helpful to the writing, because like it is easy to write about depression, for me anyway, and the negative stuff, but you're not like you don't have to always write about those moments. And that's not to say like you can't go back in your mind and feel those things again, like have empathy with your younger self or previous version of yourself and write about those things. That's still available as an avenue. And I think like as you grow older, you grow as a writer as well, and the things you want to write about change. And like I'm writing about a lot of different things now than I ever wrote about. Like I'm writing about potentially having children and what I think raising a boy would be like. And I wasn't thinking about that stuff when I was 21. Mm-hmm. So like,
yeah, one of your brilliant poems there. I think it's the first post on your Instagram page. Yeah.
If I ever have boys, which is funny, like, because that poem went up last summer. And that like has completely changed the landscape of like my career, because like it went really viral. I went from like 10,000 followers to like 70 in about 3 weeks. I was like, what is happening? And then there's just like lots of more opportunity, but like, and I guess people who don't know me will be like, oh, he kind of came out of nowhere, but this is like 12 years of work.
Yeah.
So that's been fun and interesting. And I guess like that poem in particular, like it was a response to a poem called Dangerous Men by Lucas Jones, which I know I'm a huge fan of Lucas. And that poem really spoke to me, but I think there was just things missing or things I would have said differently in his poem that I wanted to address. And that's where that poem came from. But both poems obviously quite popular. So it obviously speaks to something that is unaddressed in society, where it's like there can be a different version of what it means to be a man. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be this stoic, strong, stubborn, like unempathetic person. It can be, and that still can be a man. It's like just because you're changing the qualities of what it means to be a man doesn't mean they're no longer men. It's just like these are the things that our society values. And it makes sense that like back in the day, being super strong and resilient and stubborn, if you're like being attacked left, right and center physically, that makes total sense. But we're not necessarily, at least in the West, we're not in that society anymore. So different values come to the top.
True, yeah.
And that's all that is, I think.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that the first line of the poem is, when I have boys, they will be dangerous.
Yeah, if I ever have boys, they'll be dangerous men.
Dangerous men. And then that just spikes your interest immediately. Because someone listening to that who wouldn't be maybe as aware is hearing dangerous men? What?
Yeah, like, I mean, the reason that poem works is because, like, you're coming in with a premise that this is going to be a very red-pilled anti-Tate kind of moment. And then I'm like, they'll smile at dogs and children. And they're like, what? Yeah. So that's why that, and it's just like even just changing the understanding of dangerous in that context.
Yes,
it's like dangerous because it's going against the status quo of what's expected. So that is technically dangerous, but they're not
Yeah.
going to be dangerous to other people.
Of course. It's courageous.
Yeah.
Yeah. The courage to be real.
Mm.
You've brought in a poem for us today.
I have. I'm like a good millennial poet. I've brought it on my phone.
Just get the monocle in there now, yeah.
There we go. So this, I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I won't over-explain it. This is called Becoming Good. A man dies and goes somewhere else. Meets something most would call a god, but this god looks disappointed, so the man asks, what's wrong? I tried my best to be a good man. And the god says, you all come up here and focus on the wrong things you clearly didn't understand. What about being a good person? I didn't put you on earth so you could reduce yourself to just one thing. A person is multitudes, more than sex or gender or a set of socially defined traits. You focus so much on the noise, like what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. None of it's important. This was never in the plan. Your purpose was to be human, be good, not be divided. All the hate that flowed because of labels you decided. I just don't think you got the point. A person isn't one or the other. A person is a combination of both. For example, I'm a god. I have no gender. I am both feminine and masculinity. And if you figured out how to stop focusing on your differences, you could have claimed your own divinity. Instead, you went on and on about what it means to be a good man. But you feared embrace of feminine as a result of masculine fragility. So I'm sorry. No. You'll have to try again. Go back down. Focus on what it means to be a good person, and you'll have no problem becoming good men.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Sort of goes, we've touched on that, haven't we? In terms of labels and division.
Mm. And it's just like, and that's what, I think I need to find a better way to say this, because it's not, I don't want to diminish conversations about masculinity, but I have been saying I'm bored of talking about it. It's not necessarily bored. I think it's important, but I think it's kind of given more airtime than it's I think we should always talk about everything and from big to small issues. And I'm because of people like Tate and Jordan Peterson, etc., we're just really we're in this weird spot where we're your masculinity is the most important feature of you as a man. And you have all these bad actors really taking vulnerable men and leading them down a garden path using this rhetoric of this is what it means to be masculine, and masculinity is so important as a man. And I think it is an important factor of being a man, but if you happen to be a man who isn't that masculine, that doesn't mean you're not a man. So it's not that important either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just everything is focused on the masculine, but then there's an imbalance between yes, those emotions that are masculine and these emotions that are more feminine. Again, putting labels on things, but so you've got imbalanced men and therefore confused men.
Yeah, and I think it's important to context that. When I say masculine emotions and feminine emotions, I'm saying emotions that have been socialized and conditioned to be masculine, and emotions that are socialized and conditioned to be feminine, because sadness isn't a gendered thing. It's just sadness, but we have certain expectations culturally of what.
Yeah. So the feminine is the softness and the masculine is the more the hardness. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think just always querying that is important. And then especially because we live again in this world of where we're so quick to divide. And I think that's in partly to put on my tinfoil hat, by design, us divided means we can't really do anything about the powers that be. So they when we're divided. So if you focus on just men or just women or one thing over the other, you're naturally, even if you're coming with good intentions and trying to do good work, you're naturally creating division. And I think if we, again, just focus on okay, what do people need? And this will always be an individual to individual thing anyway, but what do people need to feel good and to be healthy, as opposed to what does it mean to be a good man? A man is because then you're basing it off a very specific opinion that isn't objective. So like a definition of a man that couldn't ever be objective. So like it's always gonna skew somewhere.
Yeah, I've found myself in that trap before. Yeah, for sure. In terms of separation and what it means to be a man, and then stepping back over time and looking at that and asking, well, who are you to judge what it means to be a man? You know, that's what it means to be a man to you, based on your upbringing, based on your ideas, based on your stories, based on your trauma, based on your lessons, based on your pain, based on things you've taken on in life that you've somewhat made your own, and now you've channeled it into this content that isn't necessarily true.
Yeah.
True maybe for you based on your context and based on your upbringing, but that's not going to be true for everyone. And you're in no position to put that out there and to shame men through this judgment of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a good rule of thumb to keep in mind that, like, if your definition of a thing or your opinion of a thing would be different if you led a different life, then the way you're thinking about it is like can't be objectively true. So if you have this very strict idea or understanding of what it means to be a man, but you know that if you led a completely different life or had a different upbringing, that opinion would be different, then that opinion can't be true.
Of course.
It's like a logical loop that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And that's always, because like some things are just factually true, like, you know, the sky is up and blue and gravity exists, and
depends who you're speaking to.
Yeah, the world is flat. Like,
yeah. Oh dear. Oh,
but like,
no.
Like
Let's
these
not go
things,
down there.
objective truths, like regardless of your life, are true. So
yeah,
being married to opinions and ideas and like being very rigid on them can only lead to like division and conflict.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about having discussions like this. It's a discussion. It's not a confrontation. And because people are married to their opinions, and you come in with your own set of opinions based on your own upbringing, your own beliefs, and it feels as though you're trying to separate this person from what they're married to, and of course they become very defensive around that, because no, these opinions belong to me. You can't take this. You can't question this. And that's a clear indication of the separation that we're experiencing at the moment.
Yeah.
Instead of I can learn from you, you can learn from me.
Yeah, or I've never thought about it that way, or that's new information. I'm going to change.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think the internet has messed that up in our brains a lot, where it's like if you say something, then you have to. That is the hill you have to die on, even if you just didn't even really think about it that hard. Because I love, like, I find it very refreshing when people are like, if you're chatting to someone about something and they're like, oh yeah, I got that wrong. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't have all this information. I got that wrong. I think there should be room for that. And unfortunately, like, especially when it comes to like public figures and stuff, and they might misspeak or say something wrong, there's no real room for like redemption and being like, you know what? I was actually wrong. I got that completely wrong.
Yeah. And you'd respect them all the more.
Yeah. But there's no real room for that anymore, I don't think, which is...
Because they've built an identity in that, they've built a following on that, they've built a whole life on that message, on that person that is being portrayed to us through media. So then to change all that,
it all falls apart.
Then, yeah. So who are you? Like, I can't trust you anymore.
Yeah.
So that's the danger of it, and I feel that's the danger of the external validation that people are receiving through these outlandish claims.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I've experienced that. Like, I've put out some claims out there that now I'll sit there and go, man, like, you were in no position to put that out there. Like, who are you to? Like, I was speaking to someone on a podcast earlier, and I remember this piece of content, and I will put it back up there again and redeem myself. And there's many others that I will use to redeem myself. But it's sitting there with a piece of content, and the content goes something like, "Oh, here's 4 signs of what it means to be a weak man." I'm listening to that today, going, Gavin, you were in no position to identify what it means to be a weak man. You're in no position to judge a man for being weak. What's being weak?
Yeah.
I mean, are you just projecting your own weakness out upon the world, and because this is such a hot topic, you want to receive this level of validation through the likes and comments? Yeah, it's your weakness here.
Yeah.
It's your vulnerability here now being exposed. Now, of course, at the time, I didn't have that awareness, which, I mean, I go back and I say, look, man, I forgive you because you didn't know what you're doing there. But those messages are still out there, which requires revisiting based on the information I've gathered since then. And even I sit here and I'm creating content today or whatever else. And in 5 years' time, I might come back and go, actually, I was wrong there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're ever evolving, ever growing, ever expanding, ever learning.
Yeah.
So you're never the same person.
Oh, well, yeah, but like you'd never expect like anyone else to be like, you've gotten it right your entire life. Fair play.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
like, doing it to yourself seems a bit mad
exactly.
as well.
Yeah.
And even like it happens with everything. Like, I mean, I look back at stuff I wrote 5 years ago and I'm like, oh, that's terrible.
But that's also a signal and a symbolic of the growth and the progress you've made.
Exactly. Like, and that's but that's par for the course. Like, and there's something I do. This is actually kind of madness, but it is fun to do. If you go into your like Instagram DMs and just search one keyword like home, Ireland, and just go into messages from years ago and just find like an older version of you from like 10 years ago and the conversations you were having and being like, I would never talk like this anymore. It's a wild experiment. It's interesting.
Yeah, but again, it's a nice piece of reflection to identify how far you've come as well, isn't it? Yeah. So, and well done, man, for the journey you've been on so far. And I'm excited for the next chapters of your life here.
Thank you. And likewise.
Yeah.
Fair play.
So for all the good people listening to the podcast, where can they find you, find your work, hear some of your brilliant poetry and follow your next steps? Yeah.
So what even is happening this year? There's music coming out from April. We're doing an EP. I have a new book coming out in August. The Whole, it's about masculinity and depression. And then all my socials are the same, which is very convenient, just at Daragh Fleming. And my website is thoughtstoobig.e.
Nice one, the one and only. Thank you, Daragh.
Thank you.
I want to say thanks to one of our partners, Gavin Meenan Construction and Carpentry. If you're looking for someone for your roofing, decking, first and second fixing, for flooring, he's your go-to man. He's based in Donegal. And to find out more about him, to check out his work, and to get in touch with him, click the link below.